It was exactly 2:47 a.m. when the silence of my home was shattered by the ringing phone. At that hour, calls never bring good news. I fumbled in the dark, my heart pounding even before I heard the voice on the other end. It was Ethan, my grandson, sobbing uncontrollably. "Grandma, I'm at the police station," he stammered. "Chelsea hit me with a candlestick. But she says I attacked her. My dad, he believes her." Before we begin, just a small request. Hit the like button to support our stories. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and how you're doing. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new story. Your one like, one comment, and one subscribe truly encourages us and keeps us going. Those words hit me harder than any bullet I'd faced in my career. I sat up on the cold floor, the fog of sleep vanishing instantly. I wasn't just a 68-year-old grandmother anymore. I was Commander Elalanina Stone, a woman who had spent 35 years in criminal investigations, interrogating criminals and solving impossible cases. I dressed in 5 minutes, grabbing my purse and the expired commander badge I kept in my dresser. I didn't know if it would hold weight anymore, but I knew I needed it tonight. I arrived at the Greenwich Village precinct, a gray building I knew all too well. The young officer at the desk looked dismissive until I slapped that badge on the counter. His demeanor shifted from indifference to panic when he read the name. "Commander Stone. I didn't know you were family," he stammered, immediately standing up to lead me back. The scene in the waiting room made my blood boil. Ethan was huddled in a plastic chair, his eyebrow clumsily bandaged and eyes red from crying. When he saw me, he ran into my arms, but across the room stood my son, Rob, looking at the floor in shame, and his wife, Chelsea. She was wearing a satin robe, looking every bit the victim with perfectly rehearsed tears. I had interrogated enough criminals to recognize a performance when I saw one, and she was calculating every move. My former subordinate, Captain Spencer, walked in, surprised to see me involved. He explained the situation. It was his word against hers, and conveniently, the security cameras at Rob's house had been broken that night. Without physical evidence, his hands were tied, but he allowed me to take Ethan into temporary custody. As I led my grandson out of that station, leaving my son behind with that woman, I knew this was no simple domestic dispute. I thought I was rescuing my grandson from a cruel stepmother, but I was wrong. I was stepping into a war zone. And what I was about to uncover about Chelsea's past would make even a veteran commander tremble, because my family wasn't her first victim, and we wouldn't be the last. Back at my apartment, the air was thick with the smell of herbal tea and the heavy silence of a shattered family. Ethan sat wrapped in a blanket, his hands trembling as he held a mug. The truth finally poured out of him, a dam breaking after months of pressure. This wasn't just a one-time argument. For over half a year, Chelsea had been systematically dismantling his life. She had destroyed his belongings, cut him off from his friends, and whispered poison into Rob's ear every single night until my son no longer recognized his own flesh and blood. But the most terrifying revelation came when Ethan recounted a conversation he had overheard through the vent. "She wasn't just talking about me, Grandma," Ethan whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "She was talking about you. She told someone on the phone that once you pass away, the house would finally be theirs. She planned to sell it immediately, pack me off to a strict military boarding school, and take Dad to Miami to start over. She wants us gone, Grandma. All of us." The commander in me didn't just wake up. She went on the warpath. I knew this wasn't just the behavior of a cruel stepmother. This was the calculated strategy of a professional predator. The next morning, I contacted Linda Davis, my former partner from the force, who now ran the most elite private investigation firm in the city. "I need everything you can find on Chelsea Brooks," I told her. "Every address, every alias, every bank account." 2 days later, Linda walked into my kitchen with a file so thick it hit the table with a heavy thud. Her face was grim. "Alina, you were right to trust your gut. Chelsea Brooks is a ghost. Her real name is Vanessa Him, and she has a pattern that would make a horror movie look like a fairy tale." As I flipped through the pages, my blood ran cold. Rob wasn't her first husband, he was her fourth. The first, a wealthy developer, died of a sudden heart attack at 40. The second fell down a flight of stairs while the house cameras were conveniently malfunctioning. The third survived, but only after his entire fortune was drained and his children were alienated from him through false accusations of abuse. She was a black widow, a specialist in targeting grieving widowers with assets, isolating them from their support systems, and then liquidating the family. We had uncovered her history, but history wasn't enough to put her behind bars. We needed to catch her in the act. I was about to send my grandson back into that house as bait, a move that would either save our family or lead us into a deadly trap from which there was no escape. Through the high-definition lens of a button camera, I watched the horror unfold in real. My grandson, Ethan, had bravely stepped back into the lion's den under the guise of collecting his school books. I sat in a surveillance van 2 blocks away, my headset pressing against my ears as I watched Chelsea corner him in the hallway. Her face, usually a mask of suburban perfection, was twisted into a sneer of pure malice. "You think your grandmother can save you?" she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "She's an old relic. Once she's out of the picture, this house and everything your grandfather left behind belongs to me. You'll be lucky if I send you to a school that feeds you twice a day." It was the smoking gun we needed, a clear confession of her motives. But I knew the law. A recording might be dismissed or tied up in technicalities by a high-priced lawyer. To truly destroy a predator like Vanessa Him, I had to lure her into a trap she couldn't escape. I had to play on her greatest vice, her insatiable greed. The next morning, I called my son. "Rob," I made my voice sound frail, letting it crack with a feigned exhaustion. "Rob," I whispered, "I can't fight anymore. This stress is killing me. If the house is what she wants, she can have it. I'm ready to sign it over to you today." Within an hour, Chelsea herself called back, her tone sugary sweet and dripping with fake sympathy. She insisted they come over that evening with her attorney to finalize the peace treaty. When they arrived at my apartment, Chelsea walked in like a conquering queen, her lawyer, Gerald Hayes, trailing behind with a leather briefcase. Rob sat in the corner, his eyes hollow and filled with a guilt he couldn't yet articulate. I sat in my armchair, a shawl over my shoulders, looking every bit the defeated widow. I placed the deed to my multi-million-dollar brownstone on the coffee table. "I just want to know one thing," I said, looking Chelsea in the eye. "Why did you have to hurt the boy? Was the money not enough?" Chelsea chuckled, a cold, dry sound. Thinking she had already won, she leaned forward. "Ethan was a loose end, Alina. He saw too much, and he talked too much. Consider the candlestick a lesson in silence. Now, sign the papers, so we can put this unpleasantness behind us." She didn't realize that every word was being broadcasted directly to Captain Spencer's team, waiting just a floor below. She reached for the pen, her fingers trembling with the excitement of a multi-million-dollar payday. She thought she was signing the deed to my life, but I was about to show her that a retired commander never loses her edge, especially when her family's blood has been spilled. I didn't sign the paper. Instead, I set the pen down slowly and looked at Chelsea with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The smile I used to give suspects just before the trap snapped shut. "Actually, Vanessa," I said, using her real name for the first time, "I think there's been a change of plans." Her face went pale at the mention of her true identity. "How do you know that name?" she stammered, her arrogance evaporating in an instant. Beside her, Gerald the lawyer tried to stand, but I signaled toward the bedroom door. Linda Davis walked out, holding a laptop that was still streaming the live recording of Chelsea's confession. "We have it all, Vanessa," Linda said. "The assault on Ethan, the conspiracy to commit fraud, and the threats against the commander." At that moment, the front door burst open. Captain Spencer and 4 uniformed officers flooded the room. "Vanessa Jimenez, Giroleis, you are under arrest for aggravated assault, insurance fraud, and criminal conspiracy," Spencer announced. Chelsea began to scream, her voice high and shrill, a far cry from the composed victim she had played at the precinct. She clawed at Rob's arm, begging him to stop them, but my son finally stood up. He looked at her with a mixture of horror and profound realization. He pulled his arm away as if her touch were toxic. "Don't touch me," Rob whispered, his voice trembling with a decade's worth of suppressed emotion. "I almost lost my mother and my son because of you." As they were led away in handcuffs, the silence that followed was heavy but healing. The investigation that followed uncovered even more. The missing son of her 3rd husband was found alive, and his testimony about her past crimes ensured she would never see the son as a free woman again. The judge eventually sentenced her to 58 years without the possibility of parole. 6 months later, the air was warm as Rob, Ethan, and I sat in the park under a blooming cherry tree. We had planted it together as a symbol of our family's rebirth. Ethan was finishing his first year of pre-law, his confidence restored and his spirit stronger than ever. Rob and I were talking again, really talking for the first time in years. I looked at them and realized that my 35 years of service hadn't been for the medals or the rank. It was for this: to protect the innocent, even when they are your own blood. I am Alina Stone, and while I may be retired, my legacy isn't a house or a badge, it's the family that stands beside me today. Justice was served, but the real victory wasn't the prison sentence. It was seeing my son and grandson together again. If you believe that no one should ever come between a family, like this video and subscribe for more stories of truth and triumph. See you in the next story.